Welcome to the first sensitization test method working group meeting that is being hosted by the Research Needs Subcommittee from the Beryllium Health and Safety Committee. My name is Kathryn Creek. I'm an industrial hygienist from the United States. I work for Beryllium Solutions International, and I'm the chair of the Research Needs Subcommittee. I'd like to first introduce the Beryllium Health and Safety Committee to the members of the working group. Some may not know the exact nature of this committee. It is now currently a nonprofit organization that is committed to promoting activities and efforts that help people better understand and prevent beryllium-induced conditions and illnesses, including beryllium sensitization and chronic beryllium disease. Our mission is primarily educational in nature, and we do this through generation, collection, and dissemination of information to our members and interested parties, and our website is on that link. David Michaels is an epidemiologist that first worked on beryllium through the Department of Energy, where he was the Director of Environment, Safety, and Health at the time, and he is the pretty much founder of the DOE chronic beryllium disease prevention rule. He said in an article that he wrote that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, and I think that is a very clear statement that you have to have data to say that you don't have disease for chronic beryllium disease. And the reason is, from the lessons learned that we had in the Department of Energy, we realized that if workers are not tested for beryllium sensitization, then we don't catch their condition early, and they can go on to develop a more severe condition called chronic beryllium disease. So Dr. Michaels then went on to work for OSHA with the Department of Labor, and then that was the time period when the U.S. Department of Labor established their own beryllium regulation. So I want to put this in context of real-world today situations in public health. So early on in the pandemic, we had low numbers for the COVID-19, and some of it was due to the fact that we weren't testing people. So if we didn't have a test result, we didn't have a case. And so this is what's occurring pretty much across the globe with beryllium exposure risk and workers' safety, is that since sensitization testing is not conducted, then we don't find the disease. And so this is why I formed this working group, is to help understand and promote and to educate others on the need for this test, and also to get some uniformity of the test. So prior to each U.S. Department of Energy site study, the rates of CBD and sensitization were unknown. Yet, as you can see in this slide, this depicts what happened within the Department of Energy, and each one of these acronyms is a facility within the Department of Energy. First, there was a case in Rocky Flats. We thought it was an anomaly that they had such high exposures, that the individual was well overexposed, above the exposure limit. And then there was one at Oak Ridge Y12 plant, and that really started DOE to look at the concern. So they initiated studies. They initiated studies at Rocky Flats and Y12, and then at Los Alamos National Lab, Kansas City plant, and Lawrence Livermore National Lab. And so, as you can see, in 1991, the first case from Y12 occurred. At Lanol, the first case in 1997, I believe, occurred, and then we followed on. with this. And the key to diagnosing chronic beryllium disease is the BeLPT, because CBD can be easily misdiagnosed as sarcoidosis, COPD, and hypersensitivity pneumonitis. So I take this data from a time period in 2005 when the data was less cluttered with different studies and the Department of Energy's Act for compensation to DOE workers. So as you can see, Rocky Flats has like 9 CBD cases, Y12, 21, Lannel had 3. The total was 67 cases of disease and 165 cases of sensitization. But for the former workers, the numbers were much higher. Workers that were no longer working at the Department of Energy facilities. And we realized we saw it almost at every site that the Department of Energy had cases of sensitization and disease. So the take-home message from these studies was that the LPT must be used to identify sensitization, that our standard industrial hygiene programs were not effective, and that the past exposure limit of 2 micrograms per cubic meter was not protective. So prior to the NIOSH studies, beryllium sensitization and CBD rates were unknown in facilities that manufactured beryllium components and developed the metal and oxides. And manufacturers routinely stated that exposure from copper beryllium machining operations was not a risk because exposures were so low, and they were low. But the study at one of the processing facilities shows that there were high rates of CBD, and they had some indication here that the average mass concentration of beryllium, this exposure limit of 2 at the time, now it's 0.2 micrograms per cubic meter in the US, was not indicative of the exposure risk. However, particles of beryllium deposited in the lung showed that it was there was a higher risk for the number of particles. So there's process-related risks shown here, and you can see that for a copper beryllium alloy point and champering operation, there was a rate of 21.4% sensitization, and all had converted to chronic beryllium disease. In ceramics, we also see some high rates. We see high rates in the wire pickling operation for copper beryllium machining or manufacturing. We see high rates in nuclear weapons facilities for health physics personnel, construction, and of course machinists. So the take-home messages from the NIOSH studies are that skin exposure is a primary exposure route for establishing the initial sensitization response. And I haven't talked about this at all in this talk, but if you have questions and you would like to know more, please get with me. I have some talks on how CBD is established. We learned that the exposure limit of 0.2 was the exposures were well below this limit in these operations, even copper beryllium machining operations, but yet there was still sensitization and disease. We think that the particle-based number metric may be a better indicator of risk, and I have formed a working group to tackle that big method development. And of course, it reaffirmed the use of the BeLPT is needed for beryllium worker medical surveillance. If the LPT is not used, then CBD will most likely not be identified unless the person has very frank disease where they have a restrictive lung condition. Here's the membership for the Research Needs Subcommittee. It is a multidisciplinary subcommittee, and we have membership from all over the world. Like I mentioned, we are also doing a method development for particle-based number metric. And so if you know anyone who wants to participate in either working group or in the Research Needs Subcommittee, please let me know. Here I show the members of the working group, and as you can see, they're a very diverse group. We have the specialists from the U.S., National Jewish Health, and Oak Ridge Associated Universities. We also have quite a group from the European countries, and also Japan has joined in. We're still looking for memberships from certain countries like Sweden, Norway, and France. And so if you know someone who would be interested, please contact me or let them know about this group. So this is our initial meeting, March 30th, and follows on our coordinated presentation by Oak Ridge Associated University's Dr. Donna Cragle, and then Peggy Mroz from National Jewish Health Center, where they're going to explain the test method and their experiences and solutions. Our second meeting will be April 27th, and we'll have short presentations by organizations that have used the test, and these are some of the questions that they can answer. And our third meeting will be May 25th, where we're going to discuss goals of the group, develop a roadmap, and ask for volunteer leads for tasks. So we're not just focusing on beryllium, even though that's where the majority of our experience lies. We think that there are other hypersensitization reactions to other elements or metals that can cause lung disease. And so we're going to be looking at beryllium, nickel, titanium, zirconium, aluminum, and possibly platinum. So discussion points are, of course, detection limits versus the detection method, methods for ideas for improving the test, and also helping laboratories that are conducting the test with their problems they're having, and hopefully help give them some solutions. This is a collaborative forum, and all discussions will be entered into open and free without any binding intellectual property concerns. Well, this is the end of my presentation, and I appreciate your attention, your participation in the working group. Below is my contact information should you want to get in touch with me to ask a question or want to participate in the working group. But I do want to introduce our two speakers. Donna Cragle is with Oak Ridge Associated University. She is now managing the biological laboratory at this facility, but she used to be the director of ORAL and is kind of sliding into retirement as a lab manager. I've known Donna for many, many years through her work in the Beryllium Health and Safety Committee and the initial work that was done for the worker studies. The second speaker is Peggy Mroz from National Jewish Health, and she is also an epidemiologist, and I've known her also for a very long time through her work with the Beryllium Health and Safety Committee. So I hope that you look at the videos that follow on the recordings for this for the meeting, and I hope you take care. Thanks.